Which version of you are you going to let fade away? Because whether you realize it or not, every decision you make brings one version of you into focus while another disappears. Most people think they're becoming a new version of themselves, when in reality, you're simply deciding which version gets your attention. Today, I want to show you what happens when you stop giving your attention to the versions of yourself that no longer belong and begin choosing the one that does. For the next few minutes, I want you to let this story borrow your imagination and simply experience the journey.
The Omega.
Picture this. You find yourself standing in a room that somehow feels familiar. You don't remember how you got here, but something tells you this isn't your first time being here. You look around. The room is completely silent. In the center of the room is a single platform. Standing around it are 6 people. They all look familiar, almost identical. That's when you realize every single one of them is you. They don't say a word. They don't move. They simply wait, as if they're waiting for you to make the next decision. You study each one. One stands with quiet confidence. Another can't seem to look up. One looks exhausted. Another looks completely at peace. One carries themselves like they already know where they're going. Another looks like they've been waiting their entire life for someone else to decide. Every single one of them feels like a life you could live. Then, without anyone saying a word, you somehow know the rule. Only one version of you gets to stand on the platform. You take a deep breath, and without really thinking, you begin walking toward one of them. Not because they look stronger, not because they look wiser, but because they felt familiar. The moment both of you step onto the platform, the room begins to shake. The walls dissolve, and the floor disappears beneath your feet. For the first time, you think you finally found your way out. Then everything goes quiet. You open your eyes, and you're standing in another room. This room is different, but somehow it feels exactly the same. That's the strange thing about familiarity. It rarely feels like the wrong decision. It feels safe. It feels comfortable. It feels like you. That's why so many people mistake what's familiar for what's meant for them. You look toward the platform again. Different room, different platform, different versions of yourself. But without realizing it, you walk toward the same version again. The room disappears. Another room appears, again and again, until one question finally crosses your mind. What if it isn't the room that's repeating? What if it's me? You stop. For the first time, you don't walk toward the platform. Instead, you look at each version of yourself again. That's when you notice something. They aren't standing in the same place anymore. The version you've been choosing is standing closer than before. The others have begun to fade. Maybe that's what happens in life as well. The version of yourself you continue to choose slowly becomes the one you recognize. Not because it was always the strongest, but because it was the one you kept returning to. You look around the room one more time. For the first time, you aren't asking yourself, which version will get me out of here? You're asking, which version do I actually want to become? You hesitate. Your feet begin walking towards the version you've chosen every time before. Then you stop. Something feels different. You turn, and for the first time, you walk towards someone else. The room goes silent. Every version of you watches. As you step onto the platform, something unexpected happens. The version you didn't choose smiles. Not because they lost, but because they were never meant to stay forever. Maybe that's what growth has always looked like. Not fighting who you used to be, but quietly thanking them before letting them go. Time passes. Room after room. Decision after decision. You stop choosing the version that feels familiar and begin choosing the version that feels true. Some rooms disappear faster than others. Some versions fade easier than others. But eventually, there are only two. You find yourself standing in one final room. It's quieter than all the others, smaller, almost peaceful. There aren't 6 versions anymore. There aren't 3, just 2. One feels familiar. The other feels like home. You look at the version you spent your whole life choosing. You remember every excuse, every fear, every time they convinced you to play it safe, every moment they helped you survive. Maybe that's why letting go feels so difficult. Not because the old version of you was your enemy, but because they helped you become the person standing here today. They were never meant to stay forever. You smile, not out of regret, but out of gratitude. You give them one final nod. Then you turn and walk toward the last version of yourself. As both of you step onto the platform, nothing happens. No bright light, no shaking, no sound, just silence. For a brief moment, you wonder if you've made the wrong decision. Then you hear something, a crack. You slowly turn around. The room is beginning to disappear. Not because you finally found the right door, but because it no longer has a reason to exist. That's when you finally understand. You were never trapped inside the room. You were trapped inside the version of yourself that believed you belonged there.